Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Music Podcast once again, where today I have a very special guest. I have Mr. Mike Tramp with me today. Mike is best known, of course, as the voice of White Lion, giving us hits like Broken Heart, Wait, When the Children Cry, so many more. After gold and platinum record sales, world tours with bands like AC/DC and Kiss and Motley Crue and many others, White Lion would come to an end in 91. Mike would form a couple of bands, Freak of Nature, Band of Brothers, as well as releasing more than a dozen solo albums. I think we're at 14 or 15 now. April 14th, 2023, with the White Lion legacy nipping at the heels as usual. Songs of White Lion was released on Frontiers Records. It gave us a new look at some old classics. Mike's ready to give us another helping of updated White Lion songs when Songs of White Lion Volume 2 comes out August 23rd. Mike, it is so great to have you, man. It's so great to have all this music still here.
Thanks for the great introduction and also just setting a couple of things straight.
Yeah. And it's I mean, you have this long legacy of so many things. Like I say, Freak of Nature, Band of Brothers, you have all these solo records, a couple in Danish now. But that White Lion thing just keeps nipping away. I mean, it means so much to us as fans. There's so many people, you touch so many lives with that music. It's four records. I look back and I think it's just it's a pretty short period of time, but so impactful. Um, when you think about that, is it a great thing that it keeps coming back, nipping at your heels, or is it like, please, people, let it rest? I got other things to do.
Well, I mean, you can look at it in two ways, and it's a fair question that, without it, you know, there's some doors and some stages that wouldn't be opened for me. And with it, it allows me to sort of reintroduce it, like you were saying, that sometimes even your old lovable house needs a new coat of paint, no matter what. It's just the way. And for me, I mean, as I'm doing all these interviews for this album now, and I think I learn something for every time I open my mouth. And because I start looking at it in so many ways. It's just rock and roll. It's just a couple of songs that were written, but here we are almost over 35 years ago since the first songs were written. And this thing about that certain things should be untouched and certain things should be allowed to be changed or refurbished. The sound of 1987 didn't necessarily for every band go that well into the future. And maybe the way I look at it is that, of course, the visual with MTV introducing the bands almost more than radio did.
Right.
Was that you got to know these bands from a whole different way than just learning a song on the radio. But right away, you got to see the band, and you got all these other things that it almost left two impressions. And one of the impressions is that the singer from White Lion does not look in 2024 like he did in 1987. The other thing is he also doesn't sound like it because there's a long way from 27 to 63. I'm very healthy. I wear the same pant size, same shoe size, and my favorite food is still the same, etc., etc. But I have grown, and I have seen the world, and I have evolved, and so it is impossible to just go up there and saying, you know what? I'm just going to put the old jacket on and just, do a little with my hair and so on. So, and it'll be just like it was in 1987, which is just not possible. And thank God for that, because I don't want to go back there. The memories of that time are phenomenal. I had the time of my life, and I'm, looking out of the audience, it looked like they also had the time of their life.
Absolutely.
Now, we live in a different world. There's war in four corners of the world. The United States, especially which we're right now talking, and which I will be touring in 2.5 weeks, are just in one big ass mess.
Yeah.
So every little thing affects what we're doing. No matter how much I want to just do something, I have to sort of like compromise with a lot of things around me. So for me to find my space with the sound and what I'm doing right now, I have to represent who I am today.
And that makes perfect sense, because I mean, a guitar, it's a piece of wood, and you play it. Your instrument is inside of you. It's part of it's connected to your brain and your soul, and it comes through. All that stuff comes through when you feel something. You can hear it in somebody's voice. There's inflections and things like that. So and you guys were never the beer and chicks band. It just didn't kind of work. And you came up in that kind of atmosphere where, it was fun kind of party stuff. We got When the Children Cry most of the time, stuff like that. It was deeper. It had a message. And there was a lot of emotion going on with the music. Um, New single out, Lonely Nights. I think it just came out, maybe even today. Uh, from this record, the new take on these songs is really, I feel like it, because I've grown with the band. The songs have now grown with me. And that's a gift. I appreciate you doing that. It's really cool.
Well, I mean, you said it exactly that way. The I mean, the fans have also grown, or not the fans. I mean, the rock audience. Fans sometimes sounds like like looking down at people in many ways, but it's not just the bands that have grown older. So has the rock fans and the rock audience, and it's not that the songs have been changed that much, but obviously, so has technology, so has loudspeakers, so has the digital world. Everything adds a little to it.
Right.
And one of the things also, when I now get a chance to go in and sing these songs a second time around, first of all, I don't need to look at a lyrical sheet. I don't need to remember where the melody is. That is just impregnated in me. It's my
That's
DNA.
awesome.
It's in the spine. So, and also, and this is something I don't know how to really make sense of it, but the thing is, I'm discovering some lyrics that I wrote 35 years ago that I'm not really sure how I came up with and what it was that I wanted to say, that because most of my head was somewhere else. But I had brought a little bit of my upbringing and my way of looking at life from little Denmark with me to America.
Mhm.
So it had its say when I sat down, and you said it, so I didn't have to say it about it. We weren't about tits and ass and beer and pickup trucks.
Right.
We did our share of rock and roll, but I had I wanted to say something different, even though I didn't set out with that mission. It just came natural. So now going in and in my studio and singing these songs, I feel that I'm able to actually tell the story the way I wanted to tell it. But the thing was, the young man who was singing these songs in between 84 and 1990 had not lived a lot of the stories in the songs. Now, that's exactly what I have. And that's just, what happens when you write songs. And when some people ask me what kind of advice would you want to give young bands and stuff like that, and obviously there's a lot of advices like I'll give them, saying, for example, there's no more music business left, but I'm saying try to represent who you are in your songs.
Hmm. Yeah, they become timeless. It's kind of art imitating life, which is, it ends up timeless. So you can still sing about those things, and it's still believable and makes sense, and you can own it. That's it's a wonderful thing, man. Um, did you use any of the original recordings at all? Is everything redone? The band's redone? Your vocals obviously redone. Anything from the original recordings?
Those tapes don't even exist. I mean, even years back when it was the 30th, which would have been, I guess, 2017, would have been the 30th anniversary of Pride album,
Mhm.
if my math is correct. I had spoken to Michael Wagner, engineer and producer of that album, of course, with a little bit of an itch, wanting exactly to remix that album to maybe bring a little bit of what I'm now bringing into the song, a little bit of back from the reverb, away from the space, back in people's face and so on. So, but those tapes don't exist. Nobody knows where those tapes. No, of course we would never go back and use anything like that. It makes no sense.
Yeah, oh, it's great. I mean, I love it, and you bring up Michael Wagner, and he was such a big part of that era, really. And your band, but so many others at that
Oh yeah, of
time.
course.
I mean, just great at what he does. I always ask myself this. He produces the second and the third record.
Yeah, Pride and Big Game.
Right, right. But main attraction is Richie Zito,
Yeah.
also a tremendous producer, player. Uh, why the switch from Michael? Because so much success with those records, success with main attraction as well. But why this? Everything is it's going really, really good. Why the switch from Michael?
You know what? That is a great question that I really want to try to elaborate on, because there's so much more to it. There isn't necessarily a, a real answer, but maybe more of an excuse in the way that because I don't completely know all the facts of if somebody in record company or management were hinting at that maybe the band should, you know, have a different sound or deeper in it. But we have to go back to Big Game to really see where it somehow, in lack of better words, goes a little bit wrong. And then we have to go to Pride of how perfect the environment was during the Pride recording. First of all, Michael Wagner was the one that invited us out to California way before we even had signed the record deal with Atlantic Records. So he already opened the door and found an apartment for us and even put up some money for us to come up because he believed in the band.
That's awesome.
Michael created a phenomenal environment in the studio. I mean, he won from day one, became the fifth member. We were not in the studio recording that album. We were just somewhere recording the album. We didn't even know we were recording. That's the kind of environment he created. He was always with the band. He listened to the band. The Pride album, of course, was our live show for a year and a half prior to that. So it
Right.
was an easy album to record. It was just a matter of Wagner capturing the band. We weren't experimenting with the band. Vito and I had even, I mean, the band had even recorded the album in '86 before and canned it and from, going to Germany to record it. So Vito and I rewritten the album 4 or 5 times. Plus we had played the songs. We knew them inside out. Now we go on the road for almost 2 years. And then we got to do the follow-up. We haven't even written the songs.
Right.
So even Vito has some ideas and things like that. And we go in, to like a close down, deserted motel in Palm Springs. And we write these songs in 10 days.
Unbelievable.
Then we go into the studio. And that's the first time the band plays the songs together. There won't even be a chance to test them out in different grooves or something like that. We just go with the feeling. Also, by the time the band goes into the studio, we have some pretty big bank accounts. Mm-hmm. When we recorded the Pride album, we got $150 a week each for per diem just so we could eat.
Right.
So you start adding all these things. And Michael obviously also had a lot of success. So we're all sort of to blame that we go in there with an association and impression that this is a home run before we even like record the first song. It's a home run. The album is actually pre-ordered 500,000. So we're gold before we've recorded the first song.
Wow.
And record company has no sort of involvement in the album. They don't really come out and listens or check it out. Let's just see if the band is on the right way. We got to protect our investment.
Yeah.
All those things. None of that happened. So Big Game, when we look back, and Vito would say the same thing, and when we look back, it's an unfinished record.
Yeah.
So now we come to your question, why is it? So maybe a little bit of blame gets put on Michael Wagner, but there should be no blame on Michael whatsoever. This was bad judgment called on our management and our record company to really not see that the band needed half a year after those big Pride tour around the world, touring with AC/DC, Aerosmith, Kiss, etc. The band needed to clear a head and get the passion for doing this again, hungry, testing it out and something like that.
Yeah.
That is the number one regret in the White Lion legacy history right there.
Wow. I would imagine you listen to that now and there's so many things that you want to maybe not change, but you want to, you want to go back and rehearse that song or this song. It's not exactly how you wanted it, or those kinds of things. Got to be very, very frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is also the reason why I've told this story before, but not a lot of people. Radar Love, which of course is the only song we didn't write and ended up on the album, was only really supposed to be a bonus track for Japan. In those days, the Japanese record company were trying to prevent the Japanese fans from buying American import.
Right.
So, but when we heard that song, played back of the speakers, first of all, it's one of the greatest rock and roll songs written.
Absolutely.
And we stayed as close to Golden Earrings version as possible, both in respect, but also because if it ain't broke,
Right.
Exactly. But that song sounded just so good when we played it that, of course, we kept it. But my point is that it sounded so good because it had already been played for 30 years.
Right. Right. Yeah.
and that's why, even though we maybe would not have changed how we played Dirty Woman, by playing it 24 times and logging into it, it would naturally get the sound of a band being in the song.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and still, and this is the amazing thing. Really, it's still a great record. I mean, I listened to it, and it's like it's just a great record. You guys were just great players and songwriters, and that's what happens. Um, these songs redone. You did this once before. Very small little thing. Um, always wondered about that too. Broken Heart. Broken Heart's on the first record. You redo it for Main Attraction. And it's, for me, it's kind of the same thing. I hear it on Main Attraction and I don't hear a kid anymore.
Yeah.
It's really solid. Not that I don't like the first one, but it sounded a little more like a kid. Whereas it had the real punch and power of, this is an adult singing this thing. Especially with the voice. Your voice had really come into its own at that point. Redoing Broken Heart. Tell me about that. What was the decision on that? Is it similar to what you're doing now?
I mean, I can use that story in every other interview that I do now. I mean, that's a great point you're bringing up. There's obviously two stories, separate stories to this. And first of all, I mean, when Broken Heart was the first song Vito and I wrote in 1983 together, it's also the highest song that I ever have sung. So just this thing about redoing it for Main Attraction and changing, going all the way from D minor all the way to B minor. I mean, even that was a gigantic jump. And now that we do Broken Heart on volume one, it's even gone further down. So I mean, I'm almost looking at an octave,
Right. It's a lot
and
different. Yeah.
exactly. But I hear the same, even though I have my reservation about the thing, because Vito and I did not want to redo Broken Heart. That was Richie Cito and the record company saying, oh, we got to do this because they believed in that song. But it's almost a song that broke up the band. I mean, Vito knew we had good enough songs that we didn't need Broken Heart to lift the album.
Right.
But we finally gave in and we did Broken Heart. When they released Broken Heart as the second single, the entire record company in Atlantic went on vacation that day, and the song just fell straight through, the grill of the sewers in New York and straight down into the Hudson River, and it was never heard from again. All those things eventually led to that. It was just a matter of time before I gave everybody the fuck finger.
Yeah. That's that's so bizarre to do those kinds of things. You got a band who's making great music. You guys have proven yourself at that point. Take the new music. They obviously can write songs. Get another song on there, that we don't have already. There's a belief in the band. It's kind of what like Michael had, believing in the band before you even record. That's kind of the thing. That's unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah,
You got this tour going. You got Jerry Best, who was in Freak of Nature.
yeah.
Marcus also.
They're both. I mean, we both sort of got together in Freak of Nature 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
So you're going out with first of all people you trust, people you like, people who, in many ways, Jerry's a father like myself. We've been through ups and downs and ins and out, and we're going through it every single day. So going down the road with a person like that is great because there's mutual respect. Marcus is a bit younger, but he was already with us at that time. So, we get to see this a second time or third time around, and we apply all the experience to this.
Yeah, It's great. Because I love the freaking nature stuff. It's great to have Jerry out there. And Marcus. Just had him on the show. He's a just a pleasure to be around. Really. The conversation was just great. He's
Yeah,
just an amazing player to do those veto parts.
phenomenal.
And that's a pair of shoes that I don't think anybody really wants to jump into
Nah,
is Vito Brada's shoes.
nah.
Very, very difficult. You have your haters, I'm sure, who are never going to be happy. That's a difficult thing for a guy. He is doing just amazing stuff. It's really cool to see you guys out there. Was there with these guys? They can play anything. They can play the entire White Lion catalog. Um, was there something that you didn't want to go to? An untouchable White Lion thing for, personal reasons or, to respect veto space maybe or something that just wasn't, you don't like it anymore. The untouchable White Lion songs, were there any?
Nah.
No.
And also not to the other thing about anything to do with Vito and stuff like that. Obviously this was Marcus and I picking the songs, and because Marcus, first of all, had to learn the original parts from Vito, and then he has to go change the key so it fits my voice and something like that. So I mean, he's not just going uphill. He's climbing Mount Everest without any oxygen. I mean, but that was his challenge, and he took a great pride in it, and he has the highest respect for Vito, and he's not going to go out there and do half-ass. He's going out there to do it note for note, now just in a different key.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, the first one, I mean, it was almost like the greatest hit. There were some songs that, of course, that's what the first album was about. Once we got to the second album, and it sort of became more the feeling like, now we've broken, the ice with the first one. Now the band's gonna choose what kind of songs we're gonna do. So I mean, anybody would say, I mean, it's a lot more fun playing Lights and Thunder than playing Wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just playing Exercise and things like that. So, a lot of that got into it. There are songs that, are great songs to play, musical and things like that. But then there's also Till Death Do Us Part. I've never done a show around the world where there's not a couple in the audience that request that song, regardless if it's a Mike Tramp solo show or that. So that's also saying thank you to the fans. Then there's the Road to Valhalla, which is the second song Vito and I. We wrote Broken Heart and Road to Valhalla the same night. The first night we sort of got together to write songs. So they all have a bit of a history in many different ways. And even though you haven't asked yet, other people have asked, should there be a volume 3, which is not going to be next year, but maybe if it wasn't, we would obviously do that for the love of messing around with the songs, getting the chance to maybe go as dark as we ever could go with this, because it doesn't really have any purpose other than just the love for rock and roll, and just seeing, could we do something that it has a stronger place to go into the future.
Yeah. Oh man, it's and it's just such a great catalog. It's fun to revisit these songs. We love to listen to them in any fashion. And you mentioned "Dirty Woman" before, and I think to myself, that's if you're gonna, if White Lion, those lyrics aren't typical White Lion, probably. Those are a little more of, you know what I mean? You got away with one there, kind of. But when you revisit that,
I'll rewrite the lyrics.
okay, yeah, I was gonna say, that's what I was thinking with, the Untouchables is like, would you want to go there? Probably not, is what.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. back to what you spoke before about, there would be certain things, and that's a great guitar riff on that. But
Yeah.
in reality, when you look back, and it's not spilling the beans or anything like it, there's almost a feel that song is not really a White Lion song. I mean, I think it might be something a little bit of forcing something out. I mean, we've been on the road with Aerosmith for 2.5 months touring. There's a lot of Joe Perry and Aerosmith groove in that song
Hmm.
that just isn't Steven Tyler.
Right. Right. Right.
So I mean, it's I when I will listen back there, I actually see myself getting out on too deep water.
Okay. Yeah.
That I'm not comfortable, or I'm not capable of playing that role that song requires.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's I've said it in a different ways. I came to America a lot fueled on what David Lee Roth were opening the door to, in there with the Van Halen persona and the show. But I was so far from him in every which way, but maybe, the stage, the look, and the hair. Everything that I stood for when I opened my mouth, everything I wrote, melody-wise, that it has nothing to do.
Right.
So it's one of those things then that when I detect myself going into unfamiliar territories on the old albums,
Mhm.
there is a sense of regret. And it's those are just facts that you want to try a lot of stuff, but it isn't you. But you don't have the spine or the experience to look in the mirror and saying, that ain't me.
Right.
Now, today, and with all my solo albums and stuff like that, I only do Mike Tramp. There is no other role I can play or I want to play. I am the world's best Mike Tramp, and that's the only thing I have to be.
Yeah. I love that. I love the organic, the natural, the you are who you are. We're getting full on Mike Tramp. We're not getting somebody else, somebody trying to pretend or act like something else. It's Mike Tramp. And that's what we want for sure. The solo albums, all you, man. And we get them in Danish. There's a couple in Danish. Now, you didn't start doing that until 2022. Your
That's how
Danish,
long it took.
yeah. Why is that? I mean, are you more comfortable? I mean, you grew up speaking Danish, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to a certain
Is it
degree. Yeah, and of course I grew up speaking Danish, but
right?
uh,
Is it
I
more
also I
comfortable?
also fled from Denmark already in '79 and swore I'd never return. You have an opinion until you have another one, and sometimes I had to live a life to be able to wanting to talk about that life, and sort of like what you were mentioning earlier on before we sort of started that suddenly we were stuck at home and the world had closed down and we didn't know, and my best friend Lars, who has written my biography in Danish, a book very much about a Danish boy going out into the world. So it has never translated very well. Sent me one day a lyric that I opened up, and I sat looking at it for a little bit and said, "Man, those are my words. I've written those." And what it was so much. It was me. It was about me. It was me. And then I sat down at the piano, which is really not where I write most of my rock songs. And instantly, a whole new book opened up, a sound that I'd never done before and stuff like that. And, I recorded the song and I sent the song to him. And then I emailed him back and says, "Are you also crying?" Because this song was about, me as a young boy going to school, hearing the church bells, almost counting 8 o'clock and stuff like that. And my mom still sleeping from working in the bar the night before. And I go, wow, I didn't see this coming. And then over the next 2 weeks, two more songs came. And then I realized, hey, we're on our way to write an album. And those two albums are a story of my childhood and the way Denmark and Copenhagen was when I grew up in the 60s and the 70s, about all the things that are gone, about everything that will not be returned, about a way of life, about everything that was the opposite of what everything is today, the way I remember the world and stuff like that. So it has its own place. It's almost, in lack of coming up with anything, it's almost like me going on vacation from White Lion. When I return, I have the passion again to sing these songs that I departed from long time ago. So without the first Danish album, I would not have done Songs of White Lion Volume 1.
Wow.
Because it almost like, it's like the, when people started getting computers and laptops in the old one, there was this thing called defragmentation that, when you kind of could clear all the clutter out. It cleared out my head. So I had the love for singing and playing hard rock again. I was completely burned out on it. I have never seen any new young bands even catch my interest. I mean, I'm a classic rock fan. I'm not going to be fan of a band that's 25 years old coming in today. I'll listen to Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Queen, Bad Company, Journey, Van Halen, Kansas. It's, Cheap Trick, that stuff. So for me to go back to White Lion just like that required something unexpected. And that became my first album in Danish.
Man, that is just awesome. And you know what? I hear it in Danish. It doesn't mean anything to me, lyrically, because I can't understand it.
Yeah.
But you saying that, it makes me emotional. I love the fact that you're cleaning that slate and it's so much of your soul in that music. And I know Living on the Edge, The Adventures of a Global Soul, was the book, the translation title, done in Danish. We would love to, fans, I know I would, and I know there's so many millions of others out there who would love to hear that story, in English. Is that something you've considered?
Well, I mean, Mike Tramp has a story for everything. I was fortunate enough to have a diehard rock fan in Birmingham, England. And we became friends through, over the years that her and her partner showed up at our shows when we played in England, and became friends. And then, and a couple of years ago, before she passed away, I actually stayed at their house on the tour. And it's just such a fascinating little insight. We were sitting there in that little house drinking tea with a blanket over and a biscuit and stuff like that. And she showed me her scrapbook. Not just has she seen the Beatles, the Stones, Manowar 25 times. I mean, the book is a book in itself, a movie in itself. But she had used Google over 8 years to translate my book. And then her and a partner had rewritten and stuff like that. And then finally, now then they gave it to me on a thumb drive. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take first chapter now. And I gave the first chapter to a friend of mine, a journalist on Kerrang magazine. And I says, listen, you already know the whole Mike Tramp, rock story from White Lion, and a bit of also, the Danish chapter. Rewrite and correct that first chapter so it reads, from the outside that it makes sense. When I read that chapter, it was clear to me that that book cannot be translated. It's so goddamn Danish in way that there's so many reference to, things that you just can't translate that.
Right.
That then I started talking to him, and that sort of fell apart. I don't know what I says. Listen, we have to start from scratch. We're going to write a new book. Yeah. The book is just going to be my story, but I'm going to tell it without referring to who was the mayor in town and what was the name of the little shop and how much did butter cost and what side of the bed was my mom sleeping on, but just sticking to sort of what I would imagine without cutting anything out, because in my lyrics, in all my solo albums, I am already telling stories of my life in that way. So I'm not going to shy away from telling the truth and stuff like that. But I do understand that it has to have some sort of middle point that everybody can, one way or another, relate to it, or add their own life to it. I mean, it's an approach I've taken to most of my songs, that you can actually replace the character in the song with yourself.
Okay.
Or with or a family member or your friend or whatever.
Right.
When it comes to my solo albums, I am the main character. But in White Lion and Freak of Nature, even though I wrote the lyrics, I did represent the band.
Mm-hmm. Would you entertain I think I read that you did something with Mark Kendall from Great White at some point. Is that true?
That's not true.
Okay. Well, it got me to thinking that, okay,
it could have been someone else.
Okay. Yeah, it got me to thinking that, Mike Tramp was part of White Lion. Okay, that's a band. Now he has all this solo stuff. That is one guy, really. Would you entertain the idea of being in a band? He's gone through, he came up in Great White. He's gone through, this singer, that singer, this singer, that singer. If you're asked to, say he calls you and asks you, it's not really your style, or your tone, but something like that, where a guy calls you and says, "Hey, we want you to sing front a band, be a part of the band again, and do, like you did with White Lion." Does that interest you? From what I'm getting at the adult Mike Tramp, you want to be Mike Tramp. Is kind of my what I feel in my heart with your sound. Would you entertain something like that, where you got a call and to be part of a band?
Well, not really, but I put a lot of explain, and I also appreciate that you basically can, as you're saying these things, you can look at me and you already sort of know the answer. But you're also familiar with my albums, and I'm going to explain it. There are a lot of singers out there that have jumped, just like there's a lot of supermodels that have jumped from bed to bed. There's a lot of singers out there that have jumped from bed, and there's a lot of great singers that are great at being chameleons.
Right.
The first song I sang was also in my band was a song that I wrote. I've written every song that I've sang besides Rated I Love.
Right.
That's one thing. Had you, of course, this is something that, of course, would never, had I been the singer on Heaven and Hell, all I could do was be in Mike Tramp. And that's obviously not what's going to make Heaven and Hell great. So I can go in and be a chameleon. Now, with all that being said, you could also have asked the question, is there going to be an album under Mike Tramp's White Lion with new material? The answer to that is also no, because the name White Lion carries on the memory and the legacy of a certain songwriting that I shared with Vito Bratta.
Right.
With that being said, it's a double album. I would definitely exercise the idea of doing a brand new project, knowing that this thing would never hit the stage because, you don't go out and play new music when you already, have surrendered to go out and playing, White Line when you rather play your solo songs. But I would love to go gather together with the band for the love of rock and roll to create new original rock and roll that is not just the same that you've heard before, but 4 or 5 guys contributing their own journey to the sound of that, with no purpose of being a commercial success, with nothing else but just all the bullshit aside, all the egos aside, going in there. And I would love to do that. And I would actually love, see, one of the things that I did in Freak of Nature, because I knew that's what it's going to take to succeed musically with the band after where I'd been with White Line, was that this required that everybody in the band were part of the songwriting.
Yeah.
And we set up in the rehearsal room in a circle. Everybody could see each other. Everybody was no more than the other. Everybody played their own instrument. Everybody wrote their own parts. So it became the ultimate collaboration without anybody going on compromise, without anybody thinking they were just there for the motions, but everybody knew they were there. And it was their band.
Yeah.
And I stepped back and let the music do the first couple of rounds before I started singing. If I had started the song, if I had started singing and established a melody line first, it would just have sounded like the band I just came from, right, regardless if it didn't have Vito playing. And the same thing with wanting to be part of something new now. It has to start from another thing, because, and let me just be the singer in there and let me add what I want to add once I hear the big Hammond organ go, stuff like that, something that I haven't done before.
Man, that, you say that with the Hammond and everything.
Show me the money.
Man, man, you got me going now. I would have loved to hear that, man. Deep Purple.
But you know what? Without interrupting you, which of course I just did, it's not everybody. You couldn't just put anybody together like that in a band. A lot of people would have to check their ego in some other place. I mean, really going in there and saying, listen, first of all, let's just do some soul searching. What are we doing this for? Are we really doing it for the love of what rock and roll gave us when we heard Made in Japan, when we heard Zeppelin 3, when we heard Boys Are Back in Town, when we heard Bohemian Rhapsody, and we just went, what the hell is this?
Right.
I mean, can we get to that point where we're not just rehashing the same thing over and over?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is in the works. It's just a matter of finding these guys, or of course it also has to be most likely some brothers that have some sort of relationship, and we don't need to spend a lot of time looking at each other and finding out how sensitive are you when I tell you suck.
Right.
You just know that we're just in a room, and you can say the same to me, or all those things.
Yeah. Oh, that and that is a challenge, and that is
it's a challenge. And then, of course,
it would be, man. Whoa. I got all these sounds going on in my head
Yeah.
now. It's like I can't wait to hear. I hope that comes to fruition for
And
sure.
now I put myself on the spot, haven't I?
Everybody's gonna be expecting it. We want a release date already. Uh, is there a song that, yeah, and this changes from year to year, day to day, um, a song that best defines Mike Tramp in your canon of your huge catalog of songs and all the things you've done, even in the Danish albums, mean a lot to you. I know that. Um, is there a song, a piece of music that best represents Mike Tramp? Lyrically, vocally, what you do, who you are as a person, all those things. Is there one that encapsulates that?
And I was just about to say the river
Sure.
by Springsteen.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah,
Well, I mean, there
that is
are
a
the fortunate thing about all my solo album is there are songs on every album that explain or that represents exactly what you're asking for.
Mhm.
But my first call would be "Trust in Yourself," which is the opening track of Museum, which is my um, if you count the Rock and Roll Circus in, that would be my seventh solo album.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's basically just I wasn't born behind a wall to keep me in. Don't need no holy book to tell me good from sin. Ain't got a problem with my neighbor or his wife. I took the open road to get me through this life. It is just what it is, but it is exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a authenticity, is I think really defines Mike Tramp, for sure. And we love that. Anything you've always wanted to do? Is there a bucket list item that, yeah, I mean, you've done so much, you've been to so many places, you've, lived life, good and bad. Is there something that you've always wanted to do and just haven't done it yet?
There probably is, I mean, a lot of things I got started on. I mean, I've always would have loved to have a career in surfing. And I realized by the time I started surfing or trying to surf in Hawaii, I went out and got washed out, and my surfing career was one day. Um, I mean, it's just stuff like that, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of things I got to start later in life. But I think the best thing about everything is coming to terms with and accepting and in my case being okay with it all of who you are, what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. I always speak more about my mistakes than my success because I've learned nothing from my success but everything from my mistakes. That is my strength every day, I mean, so I don't fill the glass or order any more in the bar than I can drink. I mean, it's as simple as that, and all those things. It's just a metaphor, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And just to be true to yourself. And I, you mentioned this thing about before doing collaboration stuff like that. I've gotten a lot of those things of being part of other records and stuff like that, and I think it's full out selling out because you don't go in there with honesty, because every time I sit down and write a song, it's equivalent to another hour on the therapist bench.
Right. Yeah. And that's
It's
it.
as simple as that. I pour my heart out in my songs. I bleed on them. They're not autopilot. There's not a record company sitting and waiting for these albums. They're not paying me $1 million to do it. I do it because it has to come out. And I'm just happy that there are people like yourself and people out there that likes the songs that I do, and so they become the other reasons why I do it. That there are actually people that likes what I do.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Yeah, and we love who you are. We let you're just you're one of us. You're a human being. Your songs are so relatable and human and feeling and emotive and all of that
I
stuff. So
appreciate that. I
it's
appreciate
authentic,
that.
you
Now
know.
I know I belong someplace. That's
Yeah,
that. That's.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't have it any other way. We love you here, man.
You
August
got it.
29th. August 29th, you're coming to see me at the Arcada Theater in St. Charles, Illinois. I can't wait.
Hey, what a great place, man.
Man, isn't it cool? It's a real,
I love Ron, man, and the whole thing you'd put up there, man. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's great. Did you go upstairs when you were there?
I went there. They
How
were
cool.
working on turning that into hotel rooms and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So, now we're coming back a year later, man. It's like yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to shoot a video there.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be cool in the speakeasy up there with all that? Oh,
Badass. About five
I did
minutes.
it. All right.
I will see you out there. Looking forward to it, bro.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike.
Appreciate it, brother.
All
Thank you for
right.
your question. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care, bud.
Bye.
Bye.